Why do I feel like I do? And so many times I look to God and I think, why, God? Why is this happening? If you are truly with me, how could these horrible things, how could these horrible feelings be inside of me? I know I identify with Gideon here. Have you ever felt like Gideon? Have you ever come to a place in your life where you just think, God, if you are truly here, if you are truly with me, if you are truly almighty, why is this happening? Now what's interesting is God doesn't answer him. We're going to see that in the next verse. But what's even more interesting is that God doesn't answer him through the angel, but yet he did answer him through his prophet, through his word. And if Gideon would have just opened his eyes to what God was saying, he would have had the answer. Because what God was telling his people is that, yes, I'm with you. Yes, I love you. Yes, I care about you. But you have disobeyed my voice, and you have turned your back on me. And what God has said to him is, I have not left you, but you have left me. Look at what the angel says in verse 15. Verse 14. It says, and the Lord turned to him and said, go in this might of yours and save Israel from the hand of Midian. Do not I send you? So the Lord doesn't answer him immediately. He doesn't answer his question. And sometimes God doesn't answer our questions right away, or not in the way we expect. But what he does do is he sends them on a mission. He says, go and save these people. Go in the might of yours, Gideon, and save my people. Save Israel. He says, Gideon, you're the mighty warrior. You're the man of valor. So go in your might and save the people of Israel. Save the people of Israel. Wipe them out completely. Destroy the Midianites. Now you got to remember, the Midian army is massive. They were described like a plague of locusts. They came in, they devoured everything. All the Israelites were scared. They're hiding in these caves, in these different strongholds. And God comes to this weak young Gideon and says, you, go in the might of yours, save Israel. Look at what Gideon says. Verse 15, please, Lord, how can I save Israel? Behold, my clan is the weakest in Manasseh, and I am the least of my father's house. Gideon says, how can I go? How can I, in my weakness, and my doubts, and my inadequacy, go and save Israel? He says, how can I be the one to do this? He was thinking, God, please send someone else. I'm the weakest, I'm the least, I'm the lowest. He says, God, if anyone is not qualified for this job, that person is me. And he says, God, please send someone else. Please, don't send me. I'm the weakest. I cannot do it. And, it reminds me of Moses. When God calls from him in the bush, and he says, go save the people. And he says, well, I can't speak, and I'm not that brave, and how should I go to Pharaoh? Please send Aaron. He's a good speaker. He can do it. And God says, I will send you, and I will be with you. Now, I want you to imagine what this angel would have said if he was someone from our culture. He probably would have looked at Gideon in his face and said, well, Gideon, you're really not the weakest. You really aren't the least. In fact, I've been talking to some people, and you have some really great potential. And we were talking about you, and we said, that Gideon, he can do some great things. And, Gideon, you can do it. I know you can. So why don't you go get those people? You can do it. But that is not what the angel says. Look at verse 16. And the Lord said to him, but I will be with you, and you shall strike the Midianites as one man. So here's the amazing truth about this story. God does not say to him, you're good enough, Gideon. You can do it, Gideon. I know you can. What God says is, Gideon, I know you're weak. I know you're the least. In fact, I know you can't do it, but here's the secret. I will be with you. And you shall strike the Midianites down. You shall fulfill my mission. You shall do what I sent you to do. And God does not tell him that he is good enough. But what God tells him is that in God himself, he is strong enough. And in his weakness, in his inadequacy, God will be with him. God will strengthen him, and he will strike the Midianites down. And see, this is truly amazing to me. And this is exactly what Paul is talking about. He's saying, when I'm weak, then I'm strong. When I'm helpless, then I'm made powerful. When I'm useless, then I'm made useful. What he's saying is, when I'm weak, Christ says to me, my grace is sufficient. My power is made perfect in your weakness. Not in your strength, not in your own abilities, but in your weakness. And what he says to Gideon is, yes, Gideon, you're weak, but I will be with you, and I will perfect my power in you, and I will use you to do amazing, wonderful things. And until the Christian realizes his or her own inadequacy, you cannot truly be used by God. Until you and I realize that we are weak and helpless, God cannot truly do something amazing with us. Because self-reliant people, self-assured people, people who depend on themselves, have no need for God. And they don't need to pray, they don't need to look to him for guidance, they don't need to look to him for provision, because they have it all taken care of. And if you and I are people who think that we can do it all on our own, then we are in a horrible, horrible place. Because Christ's power can never be made perfect in you until you realize that you are weak. And God will give us things to bring us low. God will give us things to make us humble. And God doesn't do this because he needs you to glorify him. God doesn't do this because he needs you to constantly be praising him and all this stuff. God does it for your good. God does it because he knows your life can never truly be fulfilled. Your life can never truly be great until you realize that you are weak. Until you realize that you need to have a complete and utter dependence upon God in everything. And so, do we realize that we're weak? Do you realize that you need God? I'm not just talking about like, oh, I need a car, I need a house, I need money, I need a job. I'm talking about a real pressing need. Do you realize that you need God for everything? And that you are nothing without God. And I am nothing without God. And I partially picked this sermon for myself. Because there's a lot of things happening in my life. I'm going to Bellevue. I'm hoping, and the church there is hoping that, through this relationship, through what God is doing, that the church will grow. But I am a fool if I think that it will grow because of me. I'm a fool if I think it will grow because of my own preaching or my own skill or my own adequacy. Because the only way that Christ will truly grow that church or any church is if we realize that we are inadequate and that we are in a complete need for him. And that yes, we are weak. Yes, we are the least. Yes, we are the lowest. But through God, we have strength. Through God, we have grace. We have everything we need. And then I think about this. I think about how, I'm getting married. And I'm having all these different changes, all these different things happening in my life. And if I think that my marriage will be good because of my own, goodness or cleverness or whatever it is, then again, I'm a fool. I think there's a little bit too much laughing there. But if I think that I can handle being married apart from God, I'm gravely mistaken. If I think that I can handle preaching at this church apart from God, I'm gravely mistaken.